Hey everybody, this is Perch, and following up from the story, yesterday, the day before, I don't recall. You might remember that TMZ published a story about the Superman bisexual backlash spurs LAPD protection for artists and studio. And then that was picked up by Yahoo News and multiple other sources. In fact, over the 24 hours since TMZ originally reported that story, lots and lots of news agencies jumped on board. Why would they do such a thing? Well, mostly because it hits all the right notes of a good juicy story that gets clicks. Taking you back for a moment, what often happens in news journalism, and I'm using that word extremely loosely here, is that somebody will, what they're hoping to do is get engagement, especially the online version. They want to get ad clicks. And so in the story, what they want to do is not make it completely neutral. If they just have it be, the simple, just the facts, ma'am, kind of news, then it doesn't get shared around. It doesn't get retweeted. People don't come and read it out of rage. If it has a comment section, people don't tend to comment because it needs to take a point of view. So in many cases, it will take a point of view and it will try and do the interesting job of providing bait to both polarized sides at once. This story that, hey, there's a bisexual Superman, all right, that's going to pull in a bunch of people who are pro and con. It's going to also tap into this whole Gamergate, toxic fandom, salacious, somebody's making a death threat kind of thing. All of these things it's perfect for clicks. And a lot of news agencies recognize this. And so they ran with it, of course. But as many of you point out in the comments, the story didn't quite add up. Tom Taylor doesn't live in LA. None of the creative team actually seems to live in LA. So who exactly was getting the death threats? And there's kind of this vague insinuation that it was staffers at DC. So if there's staffers, we're meaning full-time staff, not the contractors, so not people associated with the book, but editors or people who are managing marketing. Like, is somebody? But this all started to feel phony, is probably the best way to put it, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense if, are you saying that an angry, rabid, toxic fan is going to go through the DC LinkedIn page, find a person who's responsible for, associate channel distribution assistant manager, whose job it is to call and make sure that stuff's getting delivered to Diamond on time. I'm exaggerating, and they're like, this is the person I'm going to target with the death threat over this Jon Kent coming out. It just started to seem ridiculous. It started to feel like a silly, goofy story. Some of you speculated in the past video that this was a stunt designed by DC, meaning DC, who got the initial news bump of Jon Kent being bisexual. That news story has kind of died down a little bit. And so now, here's the next version of this story where we can say the fans are so angry about this. And for what it's worth, I don't believe that is the case. I don't believe DC intentionally created this story. But, and there's a caveat I'll get to, that's not completely outside the realm of possibility, because DC has been caught, or at least people working for DC has been caught with this before. Most notably, when Tom King didn't deliver the Bat Wedding, there was this story going out that there were death threats that had made Tom King's life in danger, and he was thinking about not showing up at San Diego Comic-Con. And then ultimately it was decided he was going to get a bodyguard. And then some people reported on that DC had paid for a bodyguard to go. And it turned out the bodyguard was not a bodyguard, but just a large guy who was, his friend who was hanging out at the Comic-Con with Tom King. And it was a stunt. It was a fake stunt. And there's been several of these that have gone on where the best way I would describe it is people who are too junior in their jobs don't know better about putting out blatant falsehoods and what that could actually mean. It'd be like, for example, if you dressed a bunch of people up in khakis and tiki torches and you had them pretend to be white nationals in front of a campaign's van. But you did such a absolute shitty job of that everybody recognized that it was some kind of weird hoax. And then you tried to cover it up later by going, oh, this is what we meant all along. And, then the candidate you were trying to slime winds up winning the election because, as it turns out, normies who vote don't like that kind of shit. But I don't know. I'm just spitballing here with some kind of crazy example. Anyway, in the world of a broken clock is useful twice a day. Bleeding Cool does, and good on Rich Johnston, dug into this story. God, good on which does not it sounds as bad coming out of my mouth as that Arby's sandwich tasted going in. Anyway, this story basically goes: we're told to pissed off comic readers inundated the studios to voice their displeasure with the character's newly found sexuality. This is what TMZ reported. Now, I think it's worth noting that TMZ is usually full of shit, right? I mean, TMZ is the National Enquirer of clickbait marketing. I mean, if you're like, I'm looking for something less credible and useful than BuzzFeed, TMZ has got you covered. But anyway, our sources say the studios called LAPD requesting patrols to keep an eye out with the private residence of some artists and the studio itself. Again, the problem is the artists don't live in LA, so what was going on? This was the story. And this got picked up, and Bleeding Cool says, we checked with our own sources and found that if true, none of the DC Comics people involved in the production of the comics seemed aware of it. The writer of the comic book in question lives in Australia, the artist in Costa Rica, which is outside the LAPD's jurisdiction. It was a dead story. Well, I mean, it was a fictional story, not a dead story. It was a lie. So I want to go back to something I said in the other video. A lot of people skated over. Here's what I desire. I think 100% yes, there are insane people out there who make death threats, and there's some people who take it further by actually trying to drive to the house of people that they're making the death threat to and trying to scare and harass them. That is true. Every now and then, a couple of those individuals go even further and actually try and throw a punch. Like they show up in the street and try and punch somebody because of something they believe. If that's what you're doing, whether it's the writer or artist of Superman or whether it's anyone, you're committing an act of violence. And what I'm hoping, what I would like to see happen, is that those people are booked, identified. And yeah, I would like to see some articles out there saying, here is this lunatic fan. Unfortunately, these articles are always super generic of angry fans are protesting and they're making death threats. And there's this legion of faceless fans. Let's start putting a face to it. Seriously. This isn't doxing somebody. If you're going to go to somebody's house and try and commit violence there, then you need to be arrested. I want the book thrown at these people. I want to see articles with their faces and their names saying, here is this jackass who is so unhinged with reality, they thought they were going to go attack somebody because of how Superman's son is being written. Why do I want that so badly? Because I want proof. I do believe there are those individuals out there, but I believe 99% of the stories are this very kind of misty, we're not going to give you any details, but there's bad people out there, feel sorry for us kind of story. And that is doing a disservice to comics. It's just doing a disservice to the truth. It's wrong. I want to go further than some of these people in comics. You'll see people say there's no excuse for harassment. I'll see creators say that. I'm with you. I agree. I'm on your side. So there is no excuse. So when somebody is truly harassing somebody, when they're doing this, identify, put the person up there. If certainly the harassment that people often talk about, like again going to somebody's house, trying to murder them, that kind of stuff, that's jail. That's attempted assault or murder. That's prison. Put them in prison. I want the crazies in prison. I want to stop talking about this like some generic, I'm very fearful for all the toxic fans, but we're not actually going to identify them, or we're not going to, actually press charges or do anything. We're just going to talk about how bad they are and just leave it at that. No, if they're bad, to jail they go. So again, to Rich's credit here, he talks about the Independent took TMZ's story and went even further, talking about, they basically exaggerated more. And, this is, here's some others, the Metro and the Daily Mail. And he goes, and Rich would know, this is journalism of the worst kind. Yeah, it's a lie. Now, certainly, Rich Johnson, recognizing this, won't say something further down in the article that will, make vague references to, people who are making threats, right? I mean, hopefully that's not where this is going. But to his credit, yeah, he looked into it. And seems to be a non-story. My belief of how this happened is DC got, some mail or some tweets, more likely directed at them saying, I hate this. the person in question knows somebody at TMZ and says, oh man, we're getting so much hate mail over this Jon Kent because people are bigots and they're homophobic. And so you're getting so many death threats over this. And then somebody at TMZ is like, that would make one fuck of a good story. And so they basically said, hey, are you thinking about sending some of these death threats to the LAPD? And then the person at DC is like, yeah, I probably should. Maybe I should do that. And then a story was written. That's my guess as to what actually went on here. I don't believe that LAPD did a drive-by to anybody's house in LA to kind of check any of this stuff out, because these people don't live in LA, has been idea. So anyway, so Rich goes on, and with there's a history of this kind of thing. That's true. Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Many people would show up trying to get in fights with Jack Kirby. And like I said in a previous video, Jack Kirby's like, I'll see you down in the lobby. There's a kind of infamous story that I do believe is true, because many people have cited it now, of somebody told Jack Kirby, I'm a Nazi. You don't like Nazis. Come on down and fight me in the lobby. And Jack Kirby's like, I'll be right down, motherfucker. And he went down, and sure enough, the guy had fled or not been there. But yeah, I can buy that. Anyway, it talks about this. Then it goes into, unfortunately, a few years ago, Dan Slott and Nick Spencer both received death threats at Marvel over the Spider-Man and Captain America storylines, respectively. All right, in the spirit of what Rich said right up here, journalism of the worst kind, did they, though? What kind of death threats? Angry tweets? Let's be specific. Did somebody send Dan Slott a weird, newspaper clipping cutout note that said, like, I'm going to get you, or I'm going to take away your fast food? I don't know what was said. What was sent to these guys? Truthfully, let's again, you Rich, who just did a good thing up here by looking into this and talking about how it was invented and stuff was not cited, not looked into, immediately goes down to the same stuff down here. I'm not saying this again. This didn't happen, but how did it happen? What happened? Did Nick Spencer get angry tweets? Did he get angry emails? How do people even know how to email Nick Spencer? Did somebody put it in a manila envelope and send it to Nick Spencer? What happened here exactly that says that there were death threats over the Captain America storylines, respectively? And again, let's start being mature adults here. If somebody said, this storyline sucks, or I hate what Dan Slott is doing to Spider-Man, that is not a death threat. That's somebody who dislikes a comic. Maybe they can make their point better or worse. I don't know. But that is not a death threat, okay? It hurts to get criticism. It hurts to say somebody hates your stuff. But if you blur all that together in with death threats, then when you actually do get a death threat, nobody's going to pay any attention to it because it sounds like bullshit. But then it goes on. But this time, it seems to be people getting very angry on social media or screaming into YouTube videos for unspecified reasons. What the fuck are you talking about? Unspecified. So again, unspecified reasons. The reasons is this. 2, I don't know. I don't hear a lot of screaming into YouTube videos. If you think what I'm doing right now is screaming into YouTube videos, you have a weird definition of screaming. I can assure you my heartbeat and pulse are just fine. And I'm talking in a relatively calm and, somewhat bass voice. That there is no screaming going on here. I'm not saying some people don't do it. Every now and then I click on somebody's video and somebody is like spazzing out, and those people do seem nuts. I don't know, 1, why they would do that, or 2, who would watch that. But it is a shame that this article was so close to actually taking something that was exaggerated, researching it, pointing out it was exaggerated, identifying that this is journalism of the worst kind, and then proceeding to put a paragraph in where we go ahead and double down and say, it seems to be people getting very angry on social media and screaming into YouTube videos for unspecified reasons. Hey, newsflash. The people who are screaming into YouTube videos for unspecified reasons, that's just a dick. I mean, what are you even saying there? Again, unspecified reasons. The reason is they don't like this. They don't like the bisexual romance. Again, as I said in other videos, I don't care. Particularly, I do not have a vested interest in any of this. The ship sailed for me with Jon Kent when they aged him up. Everything that's happening now is kind of like, okay. My question mark remains, is a good story coming out of the end of this? If so, I'm not going to care about this moment. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't care. If there's a really good story that's going to happen here, then this kiss is going to be kind of irrelevant to that. If it's an absolutely terrible story, then this kiss is going to be absolutely irrelevant to that because it's going to be an awful story and people won't buy it. It's just that simple. But as long as I'm pissing people off, I might as well do this, because in the videos, when I've talked about this Jon Kent thing, I mentioned that Rich Johnston has taken credit for breaking this story that Jon Kent was going to be bisexual. And Ethan Van Sciver has taken credit for breaking the story that's going to be bisexual. And people have been absolute pricks in the comments going, "It's Ethan. Why are you lying? Stop lying, Perch. Stop lying." Hey, fuck you guys. Here, right here, this is what I'm talking about. A couple months ago, Bleeding Cool first told you that Jon Kent, son of Clark Kent, and Lois Lane, the new Superman, was to be revealed as bisexual young man in an issue of the comic book series Son of Kal, #5, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not saying that this is proof that Bleeding Cool did it first. I'm just saying this is what Rich is saying in his own words. So fuck you guys. Stop coming at me telling me I'm lying for inventing this. This is what he is claiming. You got a beef, you got to take it up with him. I do not know the timeline. I'm telling you as honest as I can. I don't know the timeline of this guy did it first, or Ethan Van Sciver did it first, or whoever did it first. I'm telling you, both people are claiming they did it first. You go figure it out. If you believe Rich is full of shit, that's totally fine. But again, I'm not inventing stuff. This is what he is claiming. So go take it up with him. Stop it. Jackasses. Anyway, this whole story is frustrating. I go back to what I said before. Look, throw the book at people. People who commit violence, people who do crazy shit like this, arrest them and then display them. Seriously, that's important. Because this that we've wandered too much into the vague accusation equals proof. That's harmful to people who actually commit violence. They tend to get away with it more. And it just sets everybody on edge. I think most comic creators, people who work in comics, would feel better if they knew that, hey, 99.9999% of people who either love or hate their stories do not wish them dead, which is true. Nobody should be wandering around living in fear. And if we're making this crap up around people are angry, people are screaming at YouTube videos, none of this makes anybody feel comfortable, feel better, or does any good for comics. And bluntly, DC, what they should hope out of this comic is what I mentioned before. There's a really good story that people can hook into that will go on for many, many issues and sell well and help bring in DC money. Nobody, and only the dumbest possible people, will want this event, this kiss, this reveal that he's bisexual, to be the only story. Because if this is the only story that occurs, they're screwed. It means people will lose interest in this relatively quickly. You got to sell the story, not the stunt. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for letting me rant. Thanks for listening.